the spirit of the hat, or, the government of the Quakers among themselves, etc. Dear friend, what is made known and manifested in me, concerning the great apostasy in this day, and what I have seen and heard, I am made willing to communicate the same, to testify unto the truth thereof. It pleased the Lord, about 20 years ago, to visit this nation with his loving kindness, in sending forth a spiritual ministry, in the midst of wars and fightings, to turn us from darkness to light, and to bring us out of the strife into the patience of Jesus, into his love and meekness, to do good for evil. This seed being sown, prospered in the hearts of many, and brought forth victory through judgment, and the spirit of burning, and the Lord was wonderfully with them in this dispensation, that very many came off from the barren mountains, and out of the sandy deserts, and were here refreshed, without money, without price, and the bread was broken freely to the hungry, and water given freely to the thirsty. And not only so, but likewise our vessels were filled with the same, whereby our hearts were made glad, and caused the springs of life to break forth out of our bellies, and the bread of life to dwell within us, that we needed not to go forth out of our own houses, having an holy anointing within us to supply the wants of our souls, and lead us into all truth. And the Lord did daily add unto the church, and raised up many to go forth in the power to preach the everlasting gospel, whereby the church multiplied and increased to the astonishment of the nations. How low and humble were they their spirits! How few were they in words! Their yea was yea, and their nay, nay. Ah! Let me take up a lamentation. How are the mighty fallen! How have the stars ceased to give their light! How are the poor distressed, and the young ones bruised, by the high mountains and lofty cedars, whose habitations were once in heaven, but now upon the high places of the earth, to impose upon the conscience, and to establish an arbitrary power by a law. These are the armed beasts, and the many antichrists, which break the unity in spirit, and the bond of peace. This brings in divisions, causes differences, contentions and emulations. It roots up the good, and eats as doth a canker, whereby the unity is divided, and the peace broken. But the unity that the Lord approves of, is for every one to act according to his measure and growth in the truth. All are not strong, therefore all cannot be in the same exercise of a man, so that the disuniting spirit doth not barely lie in being of another mind and judgment, but in the imposing of its judgment and practice, which appears plainly by Paul, who clearly judged that the ground of the differences in the church, lay very much in the judging one another in meats and drinks, etc. It's the great promise of the Father in these latter days, that he will write his laws in our hearts, and put his Spirit into our inward parts, to lead us into all truth, and out of all appearances, which his Spirit manifests in us to be in the imitation, and after the traditions of men. Is it then reasonable for the spiritual man to be found in the practice of doing, before a law written, but rather wide at the feet of Jesus till God reveals? And he that walks according to this rule, shall know his doctrine, and be led to behold his glory, and witness in unity in spirit with his brother, though in a different exercise. From this they are able to boast, who is able to make war with us. This language hath mine ears heard, this practice hath mine eyes seen, to the grief and wounding of my soul. This combined unity I have no pleasure in, its nature is known by its image, its birth by the exercise of its power. What difference is there in these things between George Fox and the Papists? No, liberty,